Let me just say a little bit about what we're about to do, the why we're about to do it, and the how. Because this is called a worship circle, and the intent of a worship circle is, I think, very unique and important in the life of a local church. So what this is something we're going to do together and experience and enjoy together, but it's also a tool that you can take away. We have a blog post written up about it in all its details. And I'm just going to share with you just a little bit of the spirit of it, and that'll help us know how to lean in to a time like this, both in our communities and here. Basically, the idea of a worship circle, the term has been used in all sorts of applications. For me, it emerged when I was in a university setting, and I called a bunch of students together into literally an upper room at this school, which many of us know about, at St. Stephen University, and we all piled up in this room, and I don't know, we probably had 80 students packed into a space that should have had 30 or something. And they were all like, hey, can we bring our instruments? And I thought, well, sure, bring your instruments, night of worship. Well, 3 hours later, people who had never touched a percussion instrument before were like, woohoo, this is my dream come true. And they're living the dream. The experienced musicians had a great time too, and they could barely hear themselves, but it was awesome. And there was community, and everyone out and feasted after, etc. And I began to just see something emerging that I think was precious at that moment, and I've seen now, having done worship circles with 10 people, 50 people, even I did a worship circle once with 350 people, which is just craziness and children flying through the air, and I'm like, how is this even happening right now? But families are gathering, they're meeting with God in worship, and their kids are with them, and there's all sorts of ways you can do it. But the basic principles are three for why I would encourage you to consider doing worship circles in your local church. First of all, it's a recovery of the porch, the fire, and the home. Americana music, folk music, country music began on a front porch. It was the young musicians playing alongside the experienced musicians. It was storytelling meets musicality, meets sensitivity, meets learning. You go to these festivals, which I love to go to, where my wife's from in North Carolina, and you're out there playing in these little bluegrass circles, and this little 9-year-old is just shredding the fiddle. And you're like, where did you learn this? Oh, I grew up playing with my mama and my papa, and we just sat on the front porch. The front porch is something I think that pulls us off the stage, reminds us that there's a we musically that happens, and enables us to bring in different levels of musicianship in a pretty safe environment, which is why we give all the chord charts there at the front. Everyone can take them home. They can use them here if they want. They feel safe about it. But they're also going to be in a form where they're watching. They're looking around. You're going to notice, we'll start the first song in the key of E, and I know some of you are going to go put your capo on the 4th fret and begin to play in C. And that's going to be awesome. And some of you are going to do your drop E thing. You're going to do something cool. And then there's some others who are going to look around and go, oh, that's interesting. I never did that one before. And you're going to find that there's something you lock in on or something you appreciate. I always encourage in worship circles for people to sit near the instrument that they'd like to grow on, right? I won't say sit near the person that you'd like to play like, or we'd have very few pockets in this room happening, right? It's like, So the first idea is the porch. The second is that it recovers the fire. Many years ago, I had the privilege, Jason was there with me, we were in Drakensberg, South Africa, and a Zulu tribe came and just did some of their family and tribal dances for us. And the beautiful part of watching how they ebbed and flowed, you really couldn't tell who was leading at times. You truly couldn't. Because they were moving back and forth, they were ebbing and flowing, rising and falling together in what they were doing vocally and physically as they danced. But you could see eyes just kind of looking at one another, intuiting what the next right thing to do would be. So it's a great forum for training worship leaders and for training people to be sensitive to what's happening in the room. To allow, wow, they really allowed space. Man, they allowed too much space. It almost felt awkward. But then after it felt awkward, something broke loose in the room, and it was like we had to punch through that barrier. Intuition begins to kick in, and effectiveness in leading and playing as musicians begins to happen. Third one is the home. Our buddy Ted Kim, who we all love, shout out to Ted Kim, in New York, he says, guys, I think optimally the Vineyard Worship expression works at its best in a living room. We're actually wired for that. We started officially, if we look at our history and the language we use around it, that we didn't start on a stage. We started in living rooms. We started in places where people could connect with one another, where there was some sense of levity and, and playfulness and eating together and sharing life together. That's the place where stories get told that reinforce values. And worship circles can become places where stories happen, not just before and after, but in the midst of it, we're sharing a story together. We're embodying values and ethos. Does that make sense? So just a few little things to kind of settle on. Choose a room, if you do it, that has great acoustics, if you can, and lots of acoustic instruments. So get some instruments for people to play. If they've never played a cajon, which I think is far safer than djembes, unless we know what we're doing. If the tuba comes in the door, maybe have a talk or, whatever. But fill the room and get a room with great acoustics and work hard. Seriously, I stress people out, but I'm always working hard to get us to snuggle up, because if the room is not very, very reverberant, the energy dissipates. So don't do it in the cavern of your church. Do it in a smaller room that's got some bounce to it. Then secondly, create a small inner circle big enough for a few solid guitar players, cajon, djembe player, maybe a bass, keyboard player. So here in the middle, I just picked a few in this room. You can all come into but pick a set of people that will lock in on certain instruments so that it becomes a reference point and it creates a solid, nice musical center. And then we all pile in, and then if someone's back there, playing on and they're not sure what key we're in, it really doesn't matter. It's all good, right? They're just figuring out how to strum. This is honestly great for preteens and teens just learning strumming patterns. They are watching everybody and locking into it, okay? So the other thing is put the chairs out staggered but in concentric circles. You notice we didn't do rows. I have a thing with rows. I don't think the cosmos works in rows. But it's kind of a constellation of chairs for people to have them if they want them. If they don't, it's all good. But just create an environment where people can stand or sit if they want. So you can do anything you want as this happens. Literally anything, unless Melissa has a talk with you. Always give a chord chart pack. And you'll notice in your chord chart pack, I've given 3 songs, added on a song that I might like everyone to learn, and we might do this sometime, but we may not actually do it in the worship circle. But afterward, they're going to go home, and for the next 3 days, some people are going to be messing around with some songs, right? So throw one on there. The second thing I did, and I just did it as an example, is it's a great way to teach the Nashville number system to people. Because say you give them that first chart, you've got the doxology anthem in the key, but the second one is a Nashville number system chart. So some people are going to, a little more advanced. They're like, I should learn this. And they're watching and they're realizing, So it's a great way to teach that. Ask everyone to tune up to a tuner near them. Lord, we just thank you for the truth that's in that simple sentence. And then here's the big deal. And we only have, what do we have? Can I still have 30 minutes? We kind of got 30 minutes. Whatever she says is what happens. So we take our time. We linger. You'll notice you really only have 3 songs. We're not going to do 4. We're just going to do 3. We're going to let them drag out. We're going to worship together. We're going to play. We're just going to let it go. And that's very intentional. We just want to create space to meet with God together. So, cool? So, having said all of that, I encourage you to start worship circles in your church. Oh, one other thing. It's also a great place to find musicians you didn't know were there. They come out because it's a safe environment, and you say everybody come, et cetera, and you hear someone sing, and you go, oh, that's very special what's going on over there. And what I found is people who didn't have a passion for an instrument or came and they said, oh, I'm just going to sing because I don't play anything. The next year, they are mastering an instrument because they got hooked on what this does, right? So those are some of the ideas for us.